Hello everybody, my name is Jennifer Davenport. I'm an interior designer, educator, and store owner. And today's video is about how I made a custom wreath using Hobby Lobby products, so stay tuned. Before we jump into this video, be sure you're following me on Instagram at Jennifer Decorates and subscribe to this channel and hit that bell. It'll tell you when you have a new video coming your way. If you're someone who loves to do Christmas design and you would like to do it as a business, I have a course for you where I'm going to teach you how to do just that, share with you some of my favorite vendors, and how to get business. Click the link in the description of this video. Time to make a custom wreath. I am in my office, my happy place, and I'm excited to put together a custom wreath. Now, everything I got is from Hobby Lobby, except my ribbon. Now, you can find really good ribbon on Etsy and a few other places, so make sure to hunt there for good ribbon. I am not going to put links in the description. This is not a sponsored video. I just had a lot of fun putting together a pretty wreath. When I go to Hobby Lobby, I might not have an idea of what I'm going to design. I might not have every detail. So that's when I go to both the pick aisle and I also go to the stem aisle. I did decide I wanted to do a wreath that was a winter wonderland. Now, some of the things I chose, I might have picked up too many. That's okay. I'll use them somewhere else. But here's what I started with. And this is how I began to build what I was going to put on this wreath. And sometimes I'll even lay it on the floor at Hobby Lobby and figure things out. I want the wreath to have a little bit of snow, so I picked a pick with a little bit of snow. I'm going to have two owls on it for a little bit of a woodland winter land theme. I found this is a beautiful glittered eucalyptus. Another stem that has snow on it. Now this one is really long. I'm going to make this wreath very whimsical, so this has movement and it's a lot longer, so I'm going to incorporate that as well. A little bit of a beautiful white berries. And then this is something I thought was super cool, and that is twigs with snow on them and that little bit of greenery. A little bit of gold in the pick aisle, gold berries. And then this is just a little, I don't know, I just thought this was pretty cool, so I grabbed it. And then the last thing that I grabbed were these pine cones in white. Oh, and I grabbed flowers because I have to have flowers. Let me show you. Now, Winter Wonderland, I'm keeping everything pretty neutral, but for the flowers, I pulled in a little bit of that sage green, and I have one poinsettia that is velvet and another one that has a lot of silver glitter on it. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fluff this wreath, and you'll notice I have a towel down. That's because a lot of times when I'm doing wreaths, that hot glue gun will seep through the wreath, and you don't want to get that on your table. It's really important to fluff your wreath and get all of these branches out. It makes it look fuller, but it's also going to be easier for you to put picks in. For me, a tree and a wreath is just my base and my foundation. I'm going to build on it. That's why I will hardly ever throw an old wreath away or some old garland, because I can utilize it. Just think of it as your base, and it's going to house all of your beautiful elements. So when you're picking your wreath, don't feel like you have to get a really expensive wreath. It's just your base. This wreath was $17.99, half off. Great deal. When I'm customizing a wreath, I'm going to start on what is going to be my focal point of that wreath. And for this one, it's going to be the little owls and the flowers and some ribbon. So I'll start that first, and then I'll begin to add to the rest of the wreath. These poinsettias were $3.99, and they were half off. Now, don't be afraid to clip a flower. This one's going to be a little too big on the wreath, and I want to use some of these little petals to tuck in around the owls and maybe around the rest of the wreath. So I'm going to clip 3 of these petals off and then place my flower on the wreath. So add a little bit of glue to that stem, both sides. And we're going to put that straight into the wreath and let it sit there. The velvet poinsettia is my centerpiece. I'm going to put 2 of these other poinsettias on each side. Do the same thing. I'm going to clip them and add hot glue and pop them in. All right, those are glued on. These are our focal point. Now I'm going to put the little owls up here on the top of the wreath, and then we're going to add some more. So same thing, I'm just going to add glue to that stem from the owl and pop them on the wreath. Okay. I'm already in love. They are too cute. I suggest something, if you can. If you have a picture you can take off the wall and hang your wreath on the wall just so you can look at it. It's really hard sometimes to decorate a wreath laying on a table. That's what I have behind me. I have a nail that I keep there because I make a lot of wreaths, and it makes it a lot easier to make sure you have everything centered and laying out correctly. Next, I'm going to nestle a couple of these little white pine cones in around each flower. When you're unsure about where you're going to place stuff, hold your wreath up and put your items, just nestle them into the wreath and just kind of see, is that going to be good placement? Don't freak out if you do hot glue gun it in there and it's in the wrong spot, just pull it off because you can hide it later. But that's what I do to kind of see, is that going to look right before I start hot gluing. Next, I'm going to add my ribbon and make sure I've got it in the right spot, and then I'll nestle in some more stems. D. Stevens is my favorite ribbon. I carry it in the store, so Google it. You can find somebody selling it. This is a beautiful velvet shimmering ribbon that's wired. I always get wired, makes it easy to work with, and it's about 1.5 inches wide. Instead of doing one big bow in the middle, I'm actually going to make 3 little ones and nestle in around my focal point. This is easy. You're going to leave a little bit of a tail. You can always trim a little bit of that later. And make 3 loops. Make sure you're making them all the same size. After you've made that 3rd loop, we're going to come in with some floral wire and tie it off. Always try to get that center as tight as possible. I'm going to clip the floral wire because I'm actually just going to hot glue the ribbon in. Trim that last tail, just go straight across, because we're going to see how it's going to sit into the wreath before we trim those tails. Now look at your loops. See mine? I did one a little bit smaller than the other. So just pull a little bit. This is the time to adjust it before you get it glued onto your wreath. Here's where the placement of the bows are going to be. I'm going to do one here, one down here, and one over there. So an upside down triangle. Add glue to the back of the bow. And move your flowers out of the way, and then just nestle that in there and let it sit until that glue dries. Now what you can do is come in with something that won't burn your fingers, like a pair of scissors, and push down on it and just hold it there until it dries. I'm going to trim the ends of the tails. I'm going to fold it in half and do what's called a kite tail. So once you fold it in half, once you fold it in half, you're going to cut from the fold down. Use a good pair of scissors. Makes a great cut. Remember to cut from the fold down. Now, I may trim those shorter once I get everything on the wreath, but I can always trim shorter. I can't make it longer, so I'm going to leave it like that for right now. Now I'm just going to rinse and repeat and do 2 more bows and put them in the places that I mentioned. Don't stress about trying to make the perfect wreath or the perfect custom wreath, or I can't make it like so-and-so. Learn to love, to be creative, and to find the joy in creating, because it is so peaceful and fun to do. I really love this design where I didn't do one big bow and just kind of split up into 3 smaller ones. I think that is really pretty and going to work really well. Now I've kind of got my center done. I'm going to add more to it, but right now I'm ready to focus on the rest of the wreath, and I'm going to start by adding some snow greenery. I'm not going to just add this one big piece. I'm actually going to clip off the larger branches, glue them onto the wreath, kind of in a zigzag position going all the way around the wreath. Now I'm going to add this stem. This is in the stem aisle, and yeah, it costs more for a stem, but look how many cuts I'm going to get from it. I chose this because I want my wreath to have some movement, to be airy and to be whimsical. So I want this wreath to look even larger, and I'm going to do that by adding this. You can also, besides doing one stem, one stem, one stem, pair two together. That way you don't look like you're having such a repeating pattern. So I'm going to put a shorter one right there. Now I don't just want this leaf from here all the way up. I want to incorporate it into the centerpiece of the wreath. So add a little glue, lift up a leaf and tuck it in. The whole thing doesn't have to show, but look how that adds just a little dimension. All right, remember these 3 leaves, actually petals, that I trimmed off the flower? I'm going to add them up a little bit from the main centerpiece of the wreath. I'm going to put one by itself and I'm going to nestle 2 in together. And you can see already how that just makes the wreath look even prettier. Going to keep adding things that add movement to this wreath, and the next one is going to be this glittered eucalyptus. When I'm adding smaller pieces to the wreath, this is when you hang it on the wall, and it is so helpful because you can kind of see what you have missed. So looks good. Now I'm going to add a few more pine cones, and I'm going to move on to some other elements. Next pick I'm going to add are these sparkly and flocked little berries. Now it's time to add a little bit of subtle color, and we're going to do that with these gold berries. So look how just adding these gold berries really changes the look of the wreath. We got only green and only white. By bringing a third color in, we add a lot of dimension and light to this wreath. The very last thing I'm going to add are these frosted branches, which I think will give it an even more woodland feel. I loved these guys. You could put these in a vase with a little bit of Christmas greenery and make a beautiful centerpiece. I'm going to break off a few pieces, start gluing it in, and I am done. You know how when you're doing a craft project with a glue gun, how it makes, I call them spider webs all over your project? Well, I saw Rebecca Robeson give this advice. It was brilliant, and that is to take a blow dryer, set it on low, but make sure it's warm, and blow dry across your project, and it gets rid of all of those little spider webs. Well, that wraps up my wreath. I think in total this wreath cost about $50 because I got a lot of it on sale. Remember, when you're creating, when you're crafting, do things that make you happy. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and watch for the next one. We're going to have more glitter heading your way.